Hi guys, my name's Lola, and I'm 15. I keep wondering why people always say that it's better to be a good and kind person. Because recently I experienced something pretty unpleasant, which I doubt would have ever happened if my parents and I were not as nice as we actually are. The first thing you should know about my family is that we are sort of wealthy. We live in that big house in suburbia with a pool and a garden, and my parents are members of various social clubs. And my sister and I literally have everything we've ever wanted. But don't think that we're snobs. It's actually vice versa. Honestly, a few times I've overheard other people talking about our family, and everybody really loves us and admires the fact that our parents have managed to stay unspoiled with their money and that they've brought me and my older sister Alice up well. Ain't that delightful? As a matter of fact, we had a number of helpers, as my dad called them, who took care of us and looked after our property. And the most important of them, and the closest of our family, was our housekeeper, Rhonda. We met her 5 years ago, and since then, we never had any trouble with her. She was a great cook. She kept everything in the house in order, and she was an extremely kind woman who was devoted to her family and called me and Alice her precious girls. One day we were having that after-dinner family time, as we usually had, when Rhonda came up to my dad and said that she wanted to ask him for a favour. You see, she had left her home country to provide a living for her family and came here to work with ours, and she left her son with her husband. But recently, an incident happened at the lumberyard where he was working, and unfortunately, he died. Well, Rhonda couldn't let her son, who had just graduated from school, stay in their hometown with no future, no prospects, and no father. So she asked my dad to lend her some money for the ticket for Alex to let him stay here at our house with her. She also promised that he had always been a smart and hard-working young man, and that maybe he might be useful here as a gardener or a pool boy or anything else. It would be a great possibility for him to start his future, she said. Of course, Daddy said that he would be happy to help Rhonda, and in a week or so we had a new helper at our house. Alex looked like he had just walked off the cover of a magazine or something. He was tall, dark-haired, with green eyes, and when he was gardening for the first time and took his shirt off, I couldn't help but stare at his six-pack abs. It's no wonder that I immediately felt some kind of an attraction toward him. But what was even more inspiring than simply watching him work was that I was constantly catching his looks, which were full of interest, and I could tell that he was attracted to me. Once I got totally embarrassed when, after another tennis practice, I was still in my sparkling white uniform and I decided to grab lunch. One old lady had been so inattentive as to leave the plate with her brownie on a chair, and I didn't notice it until I sat on it. I suppose you can imagine what a piece of chocolate cake can do to white cloth. Right. When I arrived back home, Alex was there in the garden. I really tried to hide my, lower back from being seen by him, but I failed. I was probably feeling too shy about being next to him, or it was completely not my day, but I tripped on a slippery spot and barely fell down. He hurried over to try to keep me from falling and saw the brown spot on my skirt from that unfortunate brownie. He was smiling while trying to hold in his laughter, but in my rush to get into the house, totally blushing with shame, I could swear that I heard him murmuring something about me having used the restroom inappropriately. It was literally the first time that he was that close to me, and I totally couldn't let him remember this failure of mine, so I decided to take a chance and have a little chat with him and explain why my skirt was brown, since I needed an excuse to go up to him, so that he wouldn't discover that I really liked him. I made iced tea and went outside to give it to him. I must say, I not only had a chance to explain what I wanted, he still laughed at me though, but this sort of beat out a path to our future socialising. I mean, it turned out that he was really easy to talk to, and he kept telling me about his life and everything, and I just realised that I was completely crushing on him. And then there was a night that I will never forget. Our parents were hosting a few guests, and I was not interested in hanging out with my folks. So after dinner, I just went to my room and snuck up on the roof through the window. I sometimes did this to, blow the cobwebs away. and I got really scared when suddenly somebody touched my shoulder. It was Alex, who had already noticed this little habit of mine, and now, when both my parents and his mum were busy with our guests, he decided to join me to try to do the thing that he'd wanted to do for a long time. And then he just leaned closer to me and kissed me. Oh God, it was my first real kiss, and I just couldn't believe that the guy I really liked felt the same way about me. We spent almost an hour on that roof that night, and he was talking about his feelings and about my beauty and everything, and I was just sitting there looking at him. And I could bet that if a single soul saw me afterward, they would know exactly what had just happened, judging from the joyful look on my face. As you might have guessed, we started dating. We met each other mainly hiding somewhere on our property at nights, because, both of us were pretty much busy with our own lives during the daytime. Besides, Alex was sure that if my parents found out about our relationship, they'd get mad and even fire him and his mum. I, on the other hand, was pretty sure that nothing like that was going to happen, because my folks have always been on the other side from all those class prejudices, and so on. Apart from that, I hated the secrecy, since I really wanted to brag about my hot boyfriend to everyone around. One day, I actually did, and this caused a lot of problems, of which I had never even thought of before. I came home earlier than usual, because one of my tennis sessions had been cancelled, and saw Alex at the pool. Apparently he was trying to fix something there, so in order to somehow surprise him, I crept up behind him and covered his eyes with my hands. He got so surprised that he even recoiled, and I tried to kiss him, and it was only then that I noticed my sister, who was sunbathing by the pool. Of course, Alice immediately understood what was going on. She rushed to me and took my hand and pulled me inside the house. Even though Alex looked pretty scared, and Alice looked really furious, I felt that I was happy and relieved. Finally, eventually the whole truth about our love was going to have to reveal itself. And this, in turn, meant no more hiding. Even Alice's words about how different me and Alex were, and her promises that these relationships led nowhere, and her threatening to tell everything to our parents, could do nothing to my happiness. We had a huge fight, probably the biggest one we've ever had before. But my love gave me the strength to confront her, and when she told me to go to my room, I said nothing, and proudly left the house to go see my Alex. I managed to calm him down a bit, saying that Alice couldn't do anything to our relationship, and that definitely nobody was going to get fired because of it. If only I knew that the greatest devastation and disappointment of my life had only one day to go. The next day after school, I headed directly to the guest house where Alejandro lived. I knew that Alice would inevitably talk to our parents, of course, if she hadn't already, so I decided that we had nothing else to hide. I knew that at that time of day he should be alone there, so I opened the door, practically without knocking, and stood dumbfounded, because I saw my boyfriend holding in his hands a necklace that my granny had given to me as a family heirloom for my 15th birthday party. Of course, Alex didn't know how it appeared in his stuff. I mean, he swore that he had never seen this necklace before. And then it hit me. It was Alice. She purposefully planted the jewellery in his belongings, obviously trying to discredit Alex in front of our parents to make them fire him. Apparently during our nice talk, I made it clear that I had no intention of ending our relationship, and Alice knew perfectly well that our parents could hardly be against our little romance, just because he comes from a simple family. Oh, that made me really furious. I rushed directly into her room and demanded the fullest explanation about everything. You should have seen her perfectly outplayed. True wonder. She started yelling at me that she didn't understand what I was talking about, and I kept screaming at her, threatening to turn her life into a nightmare. Then she told me to really take a second and think. Why would she sacrifice the family heirloom just to frame Alex? What if I hadn't caught him, and he sold it, and the family then lost it? Her words made me turn quiet. I suddenly remembered one moment when I came into my room and found a nice bouquet made from flowers from our garden on my bed. Alex wanted to surprise me, And so he had a chance to just be in my room on his own. Maybe it was then that he could have stolen that necklace. I just didn't want to believe that it was true. So, I just had to figure out what was going on. So I went to the guest house again, but this time I was followed by Alice. I guess when Alex saw us, he immediately understood that there was no way for him to escape that talk. He once again tried to deny Alice's accusations, but apparently he had no time to come up with a relevant explanation of why he had that necklace. He said that it had been the first time he did something like that, and that he wanted to sell it to make some spare money, to be able to take me out. It turned out that his mum was saving all the money they earned from us, and he couldn't just ask her to finance our relationship. He also promised that he would never do it again. The stealing, I mean. But for me, everything didn't matter, because no matter how kind and understanding the whole family was, I couldn't date somebody who could steal from me. Well, now Alice is insisting that I tell our parents everything, but I still have some doubts, because if Daddy decides to fire Alex, Rhonda may follow him.